All right, let's talk about The Devil Wears Prada. We're going to do a deep dive into the 2006 classic that, on the surface, looked like a really fun movie about fashion, but was secretly a razor-sharp look at power, ambition, and who we become when we chase success.
It all starts with two words. That's all. Think about it. It's not shouted, it's barely a whisker. There's no big dramatic scene. Just this quiet, simple command that brings an entire industry to a dead stop. That right there, that's the power of Miranda Priestly, and it's the power of this entire film.
So the big question is, how did this happen? How did a movie that seemed like, just a light comedy about a nightmare boss turn into one of the most important, most quoted films of the 2000s? Well, the answer is a lot more complex and, frankly, a lot more brilliant than you might think.
Okay, so first up, this is so much more than just a movie. Its genius really begins with the screenplay, which took the bones of a popular book and built something truly special and timeless.
You see, the screenwriter, Aline Brosh McKenna, saw the potential for something deeper here. This wasn't just a simple revenge story. She zeroed in on the really complicated stuff. What ambition does to you, the compromises you make, and how these huge systems of power shape our lives, even when we think we're rejecting them.
Now, a great script is one thing, but what makes this film an absolute legend is the cast. And at the very center of it all is a performance that is, and I am not exaggerating, one of the greatest in modern cinema.
What Meryl Streep does here is just fascinating. She never yells, she whispers. She doesn't make big dramatic gestures, she just gives this little purse of her lips, and it's absolutely terrifying. It's a performance that's all about restraint, which is what makes her power feel so total, so inescapable. She literally turns "that's all" into a weapon.
And yeah, the world noticed. I mean, look at this, an Oscar nomination, wins at the Golden Globes, the SAG Awards, the BAFTAs, and honestly, this just scratches the surface. It wasn't just another great performance for her, it was a defining moment for an actress who, let's be real, had already proved everything she needed to prove.
This quote from Streep herself really gets to the core of the character. She knew Miranda wasn't just a villain. She was a powerful woman playing in a world that holds successful women to a completely different and often impossible standard. The movie makes you ask the question, is she a monster or is she just a CEO doing her job?
But Miranda doesn't own this movie all by herself. No way. You have Emily Blunt in her absolute breakout role as Emily, who is just a masterclass in comedic timing. And then you've got Stanley Tucci as Nigel, who is truly the film's heart and soul. He's the wise, warm friend who sees everything and ends up paying a really heavy price for his loyalty. Of course, you absolutely cannot talk about this movie without talking about the clothes. The fashion is iconic. But the story of how they got that wardrobe, well, that's a whole other drama, full of incredible savvy and a whole lot of irony.
So get this, the costume designer, the legend, Patricia Field, figured they had about $1 million worth of clothing on screen. $1 million bucks! It's one of the most lavishly dressed films in history. But here's the twist.
Their official budget for all those clothes was only $100,000. So how in the world do you make up a $900,000 gap? How do you get head-to-toe Chanel, Valentino, and Prada when your budget would barely cover a single fancy gown?
This is where the genius comes in. Patricia Field used the movie's own prestige as currency. Brands were so desperate to be in a film called The Devil Wears Prada that they just donated the clothes for free. But the irony here is spectacular. While they were happy to send over their designs, most of them refused to actually appear on camera. They were terrified of offending the real-life Miranda Priestly, Vogue's editor-in-chief, Anna Wintour.
And speaking of Anna Wintour, her shadow is all over this film's legacy. The movie didn't just imitate her world, it ended up having a huge impact on it.
First, let's just talk numbers. It was made for about $35 million, which is pretty modest for Hollywood. And it made over $326 million worldwide. It wasn't just a hit, it was a global phenomenon. And it proved that stories centered on women could be absolute gold at the box office.
Wintour's own relationship with the film is fascinating. She actually showed up to an early screening, dressed head-to-toe in Prada, by the way. And instead of damaging her reputation, the film made her a mainstream cultural icon. Her popularity went through the roof. It took almost 20 years, but she finally admitted she found the film highly enjoyable and a fair shot. Coming from her, that's high praise.
So, let's peel back that glossy surface. Underneath all the Chanel bags and the perfectly delivered insults, what is this film truly about? This is where it goes from being a great comedy to being a truly great film. It all comes down to what we can call the Cerulean Thesis, which comes from Miranda's legendary monologue about Andy's lumpy blue sweater. The core idea is this: you can't opt out. Your belief that you're outside the system is actually the ultimate proof that the system has total control over you.
This is where it all comes to a head. Andy thinks her sweater is just some random choice, that she's above it all. But Miranda, in this absolutely devastating speech, explains that her sweater isn't a statement of her individuality at all. It's the final, trickled-down result of decisions made by the very people in that room, which eventually landed in a clearance bin for her to buy, all while she thought she was making a choice.
And in the end, the film never gives you an easy answer. Andy quits, and it feels like a victory. But then Miranda, the villain, immediately gets her a great job recommendation, and Nigel, the most loyal character in the movie, gets completely betrayed. There are no simple heroes or villains here, just flawed people making difficult choices in a very tough world.
So when you break it all down, every single part of this film just works. Meryl Streep's performance is legendary, Mount Rushmore-level stuff. Emily Blunt and Stanley Tucci are career-makingly good. The script is so sharp and witty. The costumes? Iconic. And its cultural footprint is just enormous. It fires on all cylinders.
And that leaves us with the film's biggest question, one it never answers for you. Who was Miranda Priestly? Was she a monster who betrayed her friends, a demanding boss who just pushed for excellence? Or maybe was she a mentor who, in her own ruthless way, was preparing Andy for the real world? The film's greatest strength is that it trusts you to decide for yourself. It never tells you what to think. That's all.